It's a login screen, so that is good news. Let's type in our username and password. All right, we've got our dashboard up and running here. It looks like Mautic is good to go. Let's click around through some of the menu screens here. We can see it's nice and snappy because we have that dedicated server to run Mautic. Hey, what's up guys? Dave from Profitable Tools here, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to set up Mautic on your own dedicated VPS. Now, I've talked a lot about Mautic over in our Facebook group. People are really excited about using it, so I created a separate standalone video from this to help you decide whether Mautic is a good fit for your business. Now, this is definitely a DIY approach to email marketing automation. You're going to be running your own server. You're going to be responsible for keeping it online, secure, and all of that, all of the responsibility that comes along with managing your own client. So this is not going to be for everyone, and if you're unsure about this, make sure you check out that other video before you go ahead and dive in with this. But you know what? If you're adventurous and you just want to try it out and get your hands wet with command line, you definitely can do that. Now, that said, this is going to be fairly technical, but you don't need to be a developer or a systems administrator to follow along with what I'm doing. I'm actually following a guide myself, so I want to give credit where credit is due. This is one of my favorite sites for Mautic. It's got tons of helpful information. This is mateam.org, and I'm going to be following along with their guide, Secure Mautic Installation on a VPS in 2020. So if all that sounds good and you're with me, let's get going. I'm going to recommend that you use Vultr as your VPS for this installation. Now, I know there's going to be a segment of the audience that's just going to ignore this advice, and they're going to try to set up Mautic using something like Softaculous on a shared hosting site, and it's going to cost you $2.99 a month. And you know what? You're probably going to run into issues before long, and then you'll think that Mautic is junk. And it turns out that Mautic is just more resource intensive than you provided it with a shared hosting plan. So you don't have to use Vultr. Of course, I'll link to Vultr down below. You don't have to use Vultr, but you do need a high quality cloud hosting platform. Something like AWS, Vultr, Google Cloud. Those are all great choices. DigitalOcean. I know there's a lot of DigitalOcean fans out there as well. So I'm using Vultr today, and I'm going to recommend using one of their new high-frequency VPSs. I like those. I'm going to choose Chicago. That is nearby me. That's the only reason for choosing it. You can choose a server location that suits you. Then we're going to go ahead and choose Ubuntu down here, and I want to do 18.04. I'm going to go ahead and choose this middle plan. I think that's a great place to start. You can scale up a little bit as your installation gets a lot bigger. So you can see this is not going to be a free deal. You're not going to get any sort of free email marketing here. It's going to cost you $12 a month. Not a huge price, especially when you compare it to something like, hundreds or thousands of dollars for a similar spec active campaign account. So just keep that in mind. Additional features, you can turn on IPv6 if you like, although it's not really necessary. We can turn on auto backups here. That is going to be an additional $2.40 a month, but I recommend it because it just always provides a backup of your installation. Next, go down to SSH keys, and we're going to go down to the bottom here and choose Add New. Now, I do recommend creating a different SSH key for every single server that you spin up, so you might have a lot of them on your account. Now, how do you generate an SSH key? Well, I've got a link for that as well. There's a great article here from Vultr showing you exactly what to do. Now, here is where some people might start to get a little bit concerned because we're going to need a client here that's able to connect via SSH. If you're on a Mac, good news, because we can do everything we need right from Terminal, which is a built-in application. You can find it by pressing Command Space and typing in Terminal. Then it'll open up right here. If you're on Windows, you're going to need to download Putty. So go pause the video and type in PUTTY and grab that application right now. Now let's head back to our Vultr document. And if you're on Windows, you can follow along with this section right here on creating a SSH key using PuttyGen, a different application. But I'm going to be doing it on Linux right here. So if you're on Mac, think Linux. And we're just going to copy and paste this command right into our terminal window. Now, next it's going to ask which file to save the key in. By default, it's going to save a file inside of your user account, inside of a hidden folder called SSH, and then here is the file name ID_RSA. This is just fine if this is the only server you ever plan on having, but remember, I recommend creating a unique key for each server that you manage. So let's go ahead and rename this file to be unique to our Mautic installation. So I went ahead and typed out the entire file path, and I just added _pt_Mautic so that I can remember which server this key is for. Now I'm going to hit return. You can enter a passphrase if you want, or you can leave it empty. There we go. Our SSH key has been generated. Now the next step is going to be to navigate to that folder where it was saved. Remember, it's inside of your user account inside of a hidden folder called SSH. So here is a Finder window on Mac with my user account. You can navigate to the same thing in Windows. And then on a Mac, I'm going to press Shift Command period, and that's going to show all of my hidden files. If you're on Windows, I'll link to how to show your hidden folders in the description. So here is our SSH folder. Let me open this. Now I've got two files here. One that doesn't seem to have a file extension at first glance, and another one that ends in .pub. Now, basically what you're looking at here is the one without a file extension is going to be your private key. You don't want to show this to anyone. It's going to give access to your server. The one that ends in .pub is your public key, and this is what you'll actually have to share with the server. So let's open this up right now just with a text editor. All right, here is my public key. I'm just going to copy this and we'll close up the window. Now let's head back to Vultr. Remember, we opened up this add SSH key inside of the launch process for our server. We still haven't actually got that up and running yet. Let's go ahead and name our SSH key. Just give this a name that you can recognize, and then paste in that key that we just copied. Now, very important here, make sure there's no extra line breaks or spaces. If you're copying it out of the text editor, you're almost always going to have an extra return at the end. So just remove that and then hit add SSH key. All right, we are now ready to deploy our server. Notice that this is going to cost us $14.40 a month to run. We'll be able to have tens of thousands of contacts on this server. Let's go ahead and deploy now. All right, my server is up and running. I can see the IP address right here. I'm going to go ahead and click that to copy it. I did notice that I forgot to set a label when setting this up. So let me just go ahead and add this right now so that I can easily identify it from my overview screen. Let's go ahead and check this box. So next we need to add a DNS record to our DNS settings. For me, this is going to be done on DNS Made Easy. For you, it's probably something like GoDaddy or Namecheap, or if you have a shared hosting plan with something like SiteGround or InMotion, you might actually be managing your DNS records over there. So find out where your DNS records are and then go to add a new A record. Type in the name of the subdomain that you want here. I'm going to go with Go. You can really enter anything you want in here, and then enter your IP address. You're just going to copy and paste that from the Vultr dashboard and hit submit. All right, we're now ready to connect to our server via SSH. So let's fire up a fresh terminal window here. Back to our Vultr guide, we're going to scroll down to the section on connecting to our SSH key. If you're on Windows, there are some specific directions for using PuTTY. If you're using Linux or Mac OS, here are the directions you're going to want to follow. We'll go ahead and copy this command. Now notice that everything after it is the actual path to our SSH key and then the username and IP address of our server. So we don't really need this whole thing. In fact, it's short enough that we can just type it. So let's go back over to the terminal window. We'll type in SSH-I, leave a space. And now here we're going to need to type in, or you can actually just drag and drop the file for your SSH key to get that file path into the terminal window. So I'm going to open up my Finder window. This is the easiest way that I know of to do it. We'll open up the Finder window and we'll navigate to that SSH folder once again. And here I'm just going to drag and drop the public file. Remember, we want the public file, not the private key. And we'll drag and drop that over here. And then we'll type in root at, and then we're going to need the IP address back from Vultr. So we'll jump back over to our Chrome window here and go to our IP address, copy this one more time if you don't already have it handy, and paste that in. All right, let's press return. Now it's going to ask you if you want to continue, saying that they're not sure that it's an authentic host, but that's okay. This is just the initial connection testing to make sure that everything is what you think it is. So go ahead and type yes. Next, you're going to need to enter your root password. Let's go back over to the Vultr window, and you can see the password's right down here. We'll copy this and just paste it in. And there we go. We're actually connected to our server via SSH. Here we have complete control of the system and can set up a web server and install Mautic. Back over to our team guide. In fact, this is the first time we're really doing anything from this. And we're going to go down to the section on configuring a firewall. That's the first step he recommends to make sure that your server is secured. Now, there are two ways to approach this. You can do an external firewall, which is basically set up through your cloud provider, something like Vultr, or if you're using AWS, you can do that there. But there's also the option to do it internally running on the software. And actually, we can do it both ways. So let's go ahead and set up the internal firewall first, and then I'll show you how to do it inside of the Vultr window as well. We're just going to copy some commands here, sudo su. Then this command is going to allow port 22. Port 22 is the port that we're connected via SSH, so it's a very important one to leave open. All right, the rules have been updated. And now we're actually going to turn on the firewall by copying and pasting this command. Now, it gives you the warning that this might interrupt your connection. Well, we've opened the port, so we don't really have to worry about this. Let's just type Y for yes and hit return. All right, we're still connected, so good news there. Now, if you want to set up a firewall on Vultr, head over to settings and then go down to firewall. Here you're going to need to set up a firewall group, which is basically a list of ports that you want open to this specific server. So to do this, let's go ahead and hit manage next to firewall, where we can create our first group. Hit the plus button right here to add a firewall group. I'll call this Mautic PT. Now, I don't recommend, creating a unique firewall group for every single server. You're probably going to have some presets that you're going to reuse across multiple servers, but for the sake of this video, I can keep track of which one it is. Let's add a firewall group here. And now we're just going to add some rules. Now, let's set it up both for IPv4 as well as IPv6. Let's go ahead and add SSH. All we have to do is hit plus here. Then we'll also want to add HTTP, hit plus, and then we'll also want to add HTTPS and hit plus. Great, now we can see we have ports 22, 80, and 443 open through our external firewall. We're going to repeat the same process over under IPv6 rules, 22, 80, and 443 for HTTPS. All right, we're all done here. Let's go ahead and hit this arrow to return back to our screen. All right, we're all done. Let's go back to the settings screen under our server. And let's go down to firewall. And here we can find our group that we just created, Mautic_PT. And let's go ahead and update that firewall group. Hit update. And now our site is secure from any traffic outside of ports 22, 80, and 443. All right, now our next step is basically going to be copying and pasting a lot of commands from this guide. The first one is going to be to upgrade our server to make sure we have all of the latest software installed. So I'm just going to copy and paste that command. It's going to go ahead and install here. This might take 30 seconds to a minute or so. All right, great. My updates are done. Let's go to the next command in the guide. Now, this command is going to install all of the required software to run Mautic. So that's basically going to be MariaDB as well as Apache. Go ahead and paste this in and hit return. All right, the next command activates some Apache modules. Let's go ahead and do that. Now, to make sure that that new configuration is active, let's just copy and paste this command right in from the terminal screen, and that's all done. Now we're going to actually download and install Mautic. So we need to navigate to the HTML directory. We'll just copy and paste that command in here. And there are 3 separate commands to run. The first one is going to download Mautic. Now, if you're very savvy about Mautic, you follow along with their development, you might notice that we are not downloading the most current version. We're downloading 2.15.3, whereas the newest release version is 2.16.2 as of the recording of this video, and Mautic 3 is in beta. So why are we doing this slightly older version? Well, it's because it's the most current stable release according to the mateam.org website. This is the version that they recommend. And you know what? I think they're right. I've tested 0.16.2 and it doesn't seem quite as stable. I'm getting a lot more errors. So I'm going to go with this version for right now. Let's paste that command into our terminal window, and the file is now downloading directly from GitHub onto our server. Only takes a second. Then we're going to go ahead and unzip this file. Mautic has a lot of files, so unzipping does take just a second. The next command actually removes that zip file from the server. Let's copy and paste that one. Next, we have a couple commands related to file permissions. We'll just paste that in. The next command downloads this configuration file from the Mateam website for your Apache server. This makes it very, very easy to get the configuration set up for Mautic. Let's go ahead and paste this in. And the next command moves that file we just downloaded and renames it so it's the proper configuration file for our server. So if you need to find the server configuration later on, it's going to be in this file structure. Paste that in, hit return. Now we need to create a database for Mautic. We'll copy this in, hit return. And now we're inside of MariaDB, and that's where we will be running the next few commands. Here we're going to copy everything that is in blue. You're not going to copy in the MariaDB. That's just to let you know that's the application we're actually running the command from. Now here we're creating a database called Mautic. You could rename this if you want to use the arrow keys to go back and call it something else. You certainly could do that for security purposes. It might help you out just a little bit. For me, I'm going to roll with Mautic. I think that is just fine. We'll hit return. Next, we're going to grant permissions on Mautic to our root user, and we'll actually be setting up a password for MariaDB. So let's copy and paste that into our terminal window. Now you'll probably want to go through here and set this to the actual password you want. All right, that's all I'm going to change. And no, that is not an actual password I would use. Couple more commands here. Let's flush the privileges and then exit. All right, now we're back to our standard command line interface. And we're going to go ahead and secure MariaDB by running this command. Next, we'll need to type in the password that we just set a moment ago. For me, that was profitable. I'll type that in. You won't see anything on the screen because it's hidden. Now it's going to ask us if we want to change that password right away. It says because we just set a root password, we don't need to do that. So we can press N for no. There's going to be a series of questions that come up, and all you need to know really is you're just going to hit return for all of them, which will give you the default answer of yes. Great, our MariaDB database is now secured. Next thing we're going to do is open up port 80 on our internal firewall. I'll paste in this command right here. And here's where I'm going to differ just slightly from this guide. I'm going to go down to the bottom where we actually open up port 443 as well. We might as well do that while we're opening up ports. And now to be sure that all of the correct ports are open, we can enter this command in right here. So here we get a nice list. Remember, this is the internal firewall. So we actually have two layers of firewall. We have our external firewall and our internal firewall, which is running on our Apache server. We've got ports 2280 and 443 open on both IPv4 as well as IPv6. So that's exactly what we want to see. Yours should look like this as well. And we will go back up to this section and finish things up here. But you know what? Let's go ahead and get our SSL certificate installed beforehand before we even get into Mautic. We'll copy and paste this command here to install certbot. Hit return, and certbot is now installing. This next command is to upgrade the repo just to make sure everything's up to date. That's all done. And now we're actually going to install certbot from the repo that we just set up. Go ahead and hit return for yes. Then we're going to paste in this command here, which will actually do the setup and create the SSL certificate for us. Notice there is a domain at the end. You'll need to change that to the domain that you picked at the beginning of this video when we were setting up our DNS server. All right, so I've entered in my domain. Let's go ahead and hit return. It's going to ask for your email address. Go ahead and type that in. Agree to the terms and services, opt in for the Electronic Frontier Foundation to contact you if you like. I'm going to choose no. I've already opted in before. Now, if you get an error message like this, it means that you didn't follow along with the beginning of the video when we set up our A record in our DNS provider. Remember, that's probably GoDaddy or Namecheap for you. So make sure you go back to that part of the video, set that up. Now, if you're still having trouble, you can head over to this website, whatsmydns.net. I've mentioned this in several of my videos. It's a site where you can go and check the propagation status for any DNS records that you create. You can see that mine has almost fully propagated here. I have one location holding out over in Texas. Let's go ahead and run this one more time. That one hasn't updated, but you know what? I'm probably in pretty good shape here. So I'm going to head back over to my terminal window and run the command again to issue the SSL certificate. It's performing the challenge, waiting for verification, cleaning up the challenges, and I've got the SSL certificate now installed. Now I've got a couple options here to go ahead and answer. The first one is whether I want to redirect traffic or not. Well, I'm going to go ahead and choose option 2, which is to redirect traffic. All right, great. So my certificate has been issued, but there is one more task we have in relation to the SSL certificate, and that is the SSL certificate will eventually expire, but we can run a command to have it automatically renew. Luckily, the mawteam.org guide has us covered here. So let's go ahead and copy and paste this command into the terminal window. All right, it says congratulations, all renewals succeeded. So that script will now run automatically for us so that we don't need to worry about updating our SSL certificate. All right, now we're going to actually go back to the section we skipped in the guide and do the configuration wizard for Mautic. So let's head back up here and we'll open up a new tab and type in our domain name. And success, we are all ready to go. It does have one configuration recommendation. This is just to set the time zone, and I'm just going to skip that for now. We can do that from inside Mautic. It's not a big deal if we don't set it at PHP like they're suggesting. We'll go to the next step here. Now, in this step, we're going to need to connect Mautic to our database that we created earlier in this video. So remember, I said you could rename that database if you want. Well, remember whatever you named it, you'll have to type that here. For me, I left it as the default Mautic. Our username was root, and enter your password here. If you remember, mine was profitable. You leave everything else as is and hit next step. Now on the screen, we're just creating some user credentials. So this will be your administrator name. Enter your first and last name as well as your email address. This is not your sending email address. You'll have an option to set that up in a second. This is just the administrative email address. Now on this screen, we can configure the email to send from. I'm just going to leave it as is, but if you have a different sender, you could configure that right now. We also have the option to configure our mailer transport. Now I do recommend Amazon SES, but that is a topic for another video. So leave me a comment down below if you want to see that Amazon SES setup video for Mautic. As is, I'm going to leave it as PHP mail. We can always configure this later on. And let's go to the next step. It's a login screen, so that is good news. Let's type in our username and password. All right, we've got our dashboard up and running here. It looks like Mautic is good to go. Let's click around through some of the menu screens here. We can see it's nice and snappy because we have that dedicated server to run Mautic. Now, we are not done yet. There's actually still one task left in our setup guide, and it's very important. We do not want to skip this. It's to install the cron jobs. Now, what are cron jobs? Basically, it's scheduling tasks at the server level to make sure your application is going to run properly. So for Mautic, there are 3 required crons, and they essentially make sure your contacts stay up to date as they might move from different segments based on their actions on your website. And it also sets up the ability to send broadcast scheduled emails so that your campaigns go out on time. You definitely need to do this in order for Mautic to work properly. Now, there are only 3 required cron jobs for Mautic to run properly, but there are other optional cron jobs you may want to configure, and that would be for another video. Let me know if you're interested in that down below. All right, so let's go ahead and install cron jobs the Mautic way, which is by far the easiest way to install cron jobs that I've ever come across. So we're just going to copy and paste this line, which is basically a set of cron jobs, the 3 essential ones from his website, right? So this is coming from his WordPress site, and it's just going to download to our server, and then we'll load it up into our cron jobs. So let's go back to our terminal window, and we'll paste in this command. There, our cron job text has downloaded, and we'll grab the next command and paste this in, and our cron jobs are all loaded. That is the easiest way by far I've seen to load up cron jobs for Mautic. All right, that's it. Congratulations. Your Mautic installation is complete. You're free to use it however you see fit, although I suggest you do so responsibly. But that begs a question. How do you actually use this thing? How can we connect it up to our site? How can we create drip campaigns or broadcast, things like that? Well, I'd be happy to create content to show you how to do that. You just got to leave me a comment down below and let me know what you want to see, and I'll consider making that video. That's going to do it for this video. I hope it's been helpful. I know it's been a lot of back and forth in terms of, going between the guides, copying and pasting. I will definitely link to those guides in the description so you can do so at your own pace. I'll also include a link to Vultr, which will be the referral link for this channel. If you want to support us out, click that before creating a new Vultr account. Thanks for watching. I hope it's been helpful, and I'll see you in the next video.